It has been a long time coming, but finally, I've gotten around to Resident Evil 2 Remake. I played all the way through the game as Leon Kennedy, and I had a lot of fun with this game. So, I want to talk about my experience, my first playthrough of the Resident Evil 2 Remake. But before we get to that, I do got to give a little bit of a background, a little bit of a history of my experience with Resident Evil 2. And I was really young when the game first came out on the PS1. I was maybe 8 or 9 years old, but I am the youngest of my family, and I had some older siblings who picked up the game. So I would go through my childhood, into my teenage years playing Resident Evil 2, but I was never able to beat it. I just couldn't figure out the game. I would get stuck on puzzles. I didn't understand, I had to conserve ammo. I was used to games where you just run and gun, and this was a completely different style of game. So I was never able to crack that code, crack that nut when I was a kid. Now, fast forward years later, about 25 years later since the original launch, finally I've had some time to play through the remake. And I bought this game, maybe a year ago, and it's just been sitting on the shelf waiting to get played. But finally, I made the time. And the reason I wanted to get through this game now is because I felt like I had to play it before I went to Resident Evil 9, right? It didn't really make sense for me to have this game, not play it and go straight to 9. So, made the time, got through it, and now let me share my thoughts. So, let me start by saying, what a game. The remake, the Resident Evil 2 remake, was just an awesome game throughout the whole thing. And let me also say that it is a short game, but I actually enjoyed that because I'm so used today playing games that are 30, 40 hours long with a lot of filler. And that is not Resident Evil 2. Resident Evil 2 was short and sweet. I finished the game in about 8 hours, but it was action packed. I found it fun throughout the whole game. And of course, I can go back and play through as Claire as well. So, again, though, the game itself was absolutely awesome. The atmosphere, the combat, the enemies, the tension. And let me say, this game has a lot of tension. There were some times where my heart was beating, where I was listening to the footsteps of Mr. X right on my tail, and I was trying to get out of there. So let's walk through the game from the beginning. And I'm just going to kind of go through the different main areas of the game and share my thoughts. So, starting with Raccoon City and the RPD, the Raccoon Police Department. And that's got to be one of the best parts of the game. The police department was just so masterfully constructed. It really felt like a police department, the front lobby area. You're going into the back rooms where the police have their lockers and guns are stored. There is tons of puzzles, tons of combination locks, tons to uncover, tons to explore. And even by the time I was out of the RPD, like there was a lot of puzzles I didn't solve. There was some areas I didn't quite, get everything out of. But I knew where they were, and I could have honestly spent the time to try to solve those puzzles, but I just decided to carry on. But I really enjoyed that section. It's awesome, the different enemies, the zombies, the lickers. And then that second half of the RPD, when Mr. X shows up, it just takes the game in a whole different direction because it feels like everywhere you go, you just hear those footsteps stomping around the RPD, and the tension is high, and that's one thing I really loved about this game. You don't get that kind of experience, that tension, that fear from many games at all. Like I can barely name any other games that I felt that, maybe Silent Hill, but Resident Evil 2 is in its own league. And I'm not trying to say it's a bad tension, it's a good tension. It really kept me on my toes and just again had fun throughout the whole game. So that was the RPD. And I got a lot out of the RPD. The one mistake I made looking back now on my playthrough of this game is that, when you go into Resident Evil 2, you always hear people say you need to conserve your ammo, you need to conserve your resources for the end of the game. You don't want to get to the end and not have enough ammo to get through, beat the bosses, the final boss or whatnot. And so the biggest mistake I made in this game was being overly conservative with my ammo. And I think this is a unique game in the sense that I would probably have more fun playing through it on my second time than my first time. And I can't say that with most games. In fact, I can't really say that with any games. But with this one, having been through it now once, I understand how to pace myself. And until you go through this game, you don't really know how to do that. You don't know if you're using too many resources or if you're using not enough resources. So now that I've been through it, fully got that figured out, and I think I would have a lot more fun going through the game because I was way too conservative in the RPD. I left out of there, and that police department was swarming with zombies. I still had, 3 or 4 boards left, so tons of windows I didn't even cover up. And yeah, that made the RPD a little more stressful for me than it should have been, I think. But that was a learning experience. So from there, went down into the parking garage, into the jailhouse, and that was an awesome section. Really cool to see those zombie dogs, some good puzzles down there. And then when you're leaving the jailhouse and Mr. X shows up again, that section was just like, that was crazy. How are you going to get by him? How are you going to squeeze by him? Luckily, I had a flash grenade, flashed them all, ran out of there, and had a lot of fun in the jailhouse, in the parking garage. So that was a cool section, very short and sweet section. And then we moved down into the sewers. And by the time I got into the sewers, I kind of figured out, I'm being too conservative. I got to start using some of these resources because my chest, my locker, was full. I had tons of herbs, tons of ammo, tons of gunpowder. And from this point on in the game, I just started letting the bullets fly. And that made the sewers and the last section of the game a lot easier for me. And in a sense, a lot more fun because, I didn't have to conserve ammo. I didn't have to have so much stress. I was able to just pretty much kill anything I wanted. So the sewer section I found was a bit mazy. Um, but I actually enjoyed it. I thought it was refreshing from the RPD. It was just nice to have Mr. X off my tail. That's what I liked about the sewers. It was like, okay, I'm out of the RPD. The RPD was a cooler section, but at least here in the sewers, I'm safe from Mr. X. So ran through the sewers, some good puzzles in there as well. Again, it was quite mazy, but besides that, I didn't mind it, and the section wasn't that long that it got annoying. So went through the sewers, and then we get to the last section, maybe my favorite section in the game, and that is the lab. And I just really like the look and the atmosphere in the lab. The enemies were cool, those kind of plant creatures. You got the flamethrowers, so you're burning through those guys. And then you get that also really cool, like radio device, whatever it is, with the wavelengths on it. So you're using that device to, go to the circuit breakers, turn them on or off. And I thought that was pretty cool. But the end lab section, one of my favorite sections. And again, I had so much ammo in the lab that I was just smoking everything, tons of shotgun shells, tons of pistol ammo, and tons of flamethrower ammo. So got through the lab. Now, the bosses in the game, there's not many bosses, not many boss fights, but they are very fun boss fights. They do have a lot of tension. And there is some challenge there, especially if you don't have much ammo, if you don't have any frag grenades, that type of thing. But I enjoyed it. I liked how you kind of had to snipe the eyes. And yeah, just the final boss fights in the lab. I'm not going to spoil them for you, but those boss fights were awesome. And then running out of the lab with the timer, to close out the game, just again, more tension there and some great story elements there. Again, that I'm not going to spoil, but overall, I got to say, this game was awesome. I think I will play through it again. I should probably go through it as Claire, but I also do feel I gotta go back to the PS1 version. I can't let the PS1 version get the best of me. I gotta go back to that eventually and knock that off. But another Resident Evil game in the books for me, and I'm officially ready now for Resident Evil 9. So I want to ask you guys, what are your thoughts on the Resident Evil 2 remake? Have you played it? What did you like about it? I would love to hear it below in the comments. And I think my biggest takeaway from playing the game is that, you really got to learn how to pace yourself in these type of games, and you don't really figure that out until you play through it once. So drop a comment below if you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like, subscribe for more, and have a good day.